Welcome, Ani Bujo, everyone. My name is Jen Luxmore Begin. I am a sister of Grandmother's Voice, a grassroots organization and platform elevating Indigenous wisdom. It is an honor to be here with each of you tonight, and those who will be watching the recording in ceremony lifted by the heartbeat of Mother Earth and held in the sacred presence of the ancestors. Each week, we gather in this circle with grandmothers and grandfathers from across the 7 continents, elders whose lives are rooted in sacred knowledge, ancestral memory, and a deep commitment to healing, truth, and spirit. Their voices carry the wisdom we need in these times, wisdom born not of theory, but of lived experience, of ceremony, of connection to land and spirit. This is not just a series, it is a remembering, a weaving of story and spirit that calls us back to who we are and to who we are becoming. Now is the time. Now is the time to gather, to listen, to honor the voices of the elders who have carried these teachings through generations. Tonight, we are honored to welcome Anthony Walking Crow and Geronimo Archuleta. And I will now pass it over to Grandmother Susan to welcome our guests. Miigwech.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for stepping up and doing this on this chilly night. We've all gone over the temperatures that we're experiencing, and it's definitely cold out there. So thank you, Jen, and really grateful to be here tonight with all of us and those of you that I can't see, but I can believe that you're there, and it's beautiful. I'm going to begin by actually just passing the feather to Anthony so that he can take us into sacred space in the way that he does best. Anthony Walking Crow.
Oh. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, ladies. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Grandma. And thank you, Tata. I refer to Geronimo as Tata because he's the grandfather. That's just me. Anyways, so I like to open with song. I burned the sage. I burned the juniper. I use both because of where I live. And I'm going to open with this song. Aho Shinawana Honata. Aho Shinawana. Hey, thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, Great Mother. Thank you, power and guidance of the medicine wheel and all our relations. Aho Mitakuti. We are all related. All my relations. We are all related. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to do that. And thank you for the introduction. And thank you for the sacred space. And we are all sacred space. We all carry the sacred space, I believe, within us, every single one of us. I hope. It just took me a long time to figure it out. So my name is Anthony Walking Crow, transformational sacred drum medicine. And when I say transformational sacred drum medicine, that is what I used to do. And as I evolved on the red road and became the curandero, the healer, the whatever you would like to call me, that transformational sacred drum medicine became the embodiment of what I do. And in fact, I'm writing a book right now called Evolution of the Elemental Journey, the embodiment. And it's literally about how I became this guy from a lifetime of hurts, wounds, shames, trauma, alcoholism, drug addiction, food addiction, sex addiction, on and on and on and on and on. And I know a lot of my brothers and sisters know what I'm talking about. I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles, California, in the San Fernando Valley, a place called Pacoima. Some of you may have heard of Pacoima. It's the place where Rodney King once upon a time got beaten by the Foothill Division. I lived directly behind the Foothill Division. And I grew up there and born in San Fernando, California, just a few miles away, and eventually in Mission Hills with my parents and my brothers and sisters. I wasn't raised as a native. I wasn't raised as an indigenous person. I was raised as a Mexican that didn't speak Spanish. And where I went to school, they said, we don't speak Spanish here. We only speak English. And I didn't speak Spanish, so I don't know who they were talking to, but they wanted to instill that in me, and they lost. I'm the kind of kid that was told to shut up, be quiet, go outside, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And I was silenced every chance they got. They tried to silence me, but I was also a trouble kid. The abuse started in the kindergarten. I went to a Catholic kindergarten school. Those of you who are Native, who have spent time in mission schools or schools, period, that were sent away, know what I'm talking about. Abuse by nuns. They thought they were the rulers. And they slapped me, they pinched me, they pulled my hair, they pulled my arm, they shook me furiously. They labeled me as a troublemaker. And years later, I have an aunt, my uncle Charlie's wife, who used to say to me, you know, when you were a little boy, you were a travieso. And if you understand Spanish, travieso means troublemaker. And I would say, whoa, stop right there. I'm not the irresponsible parent you are, along with my parents and all the teachers. I'm not the troublemaker. I didn't raise me. Take responsibility for your irresponsibility. That didn't go over too well. But I was already heading down my red path, down the red road to where I was going, and where I was coming to this point right here, right now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, but right here, Moon Day night at 7:10 here in Sedona, coming to this exact point, and nothing else beyond that matters. And I became an alcoholic at the age of probably 11. I picked up a beer at 11 along with pot, and I thought I was playing big shot with the kids and the younger kids in the neighborhood. They were impressed. So what? Didn't mean anything. But that set me down the road to eventually find trouble for myself, more trouble than I was already in school and at home and whatnot. I was very mouthy. And I think that was due to all the silencing. I always wanted to say something. I always had to say something. I always felt I had to defend myself for the things that I was being accused of, but nobody ever asked me if things were okay at home, right? I live with the drunk. I live with an enabler, and when there's a drunken enabler involved, everybody else gets left out in the cold because they're only dealing with each other. And I say that from my experience as the alcoholic because I was following in the footsteps of the old man. But fortunate for me and the LAPD, one night I got pulled over and arrested for DUI. And that moment changed my life and the lives of many people around me, and eventually to come in and out of my life. And Susan's one, Dr. Geronimo is one, and Jen is one. These are people I didn't, Dr. Geronimo and Jen I didn't know before today. And I still don't know them yet, but I get to hear Dr. Geronimo's story in a little bit, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm 64 years old. I know that I look like I'm 34. Just kidding. But I live a quiet life in Sedona. I came here about 7, almost 8 years ago. I left Los Angeles. I walked away from my jobs there. I was in television and film industry through software companies and systems integration for post-production video editing systems for television and movies. I did that for quite a long time in sobriety once I got sober. But when I stepped onto the red road, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was stepping on or stepping in. And I say that jokingly, but with all sincerity, because I didn't know. I wasn't raised as a native, right? And my people are, my mother is Tarahumara and Purepeche on her side of the family, and my father was Chichimeca. His people were from Guanajuato, and my mother's people were from El Paso, Texas, and Jalisco, Mexico. So I'm a mix of people. I'm 17% Spaniard. Who isn't? But the more I became willing to find my path, to stay on the red road, and to find my peace, my place within myself and not outside of myself. I was always trying to find a place outside of myself because people were never giving me a place to be. As a child, a sister of my Aunt Terry one day saw me at a family affair, and she said, I always worried about you. I said, really, why? She said, because when you were a little kid, they wouldn't let you play. They made you sit there while the other kids played. I felt bad for you. And I know that she couldn't do anything because I was technically none of her business. I'm not her child. And that would be, interrupting somebody else's flow in the wrong way. And that's not looked upon very well. But when I heard that from her all those years later, it made me feel happy and glad that somebody was noticing. Somebody was watching. Like I watch now. I'm a man who doesn't have any children, but I say they're all my children. I'm the eyes in the community. I look after everybody. Not everybody is my business, but I am the eyes. I see, I hear, I understand. I hope. So finding the red road, I had been married 3 times, they say 3 times a charm. And I don't consider myself a failure in those marriages. I just realized through the marriages as I moved along and I gathered information and I began to heal myself from the inside out, not from the outside in, that I had no business in relationships because I didn't know how to be in a relationship. I was busy taking victims, at all costs, and it didn't end with marriages because there were women before the marriages, there were women after the marriages. I'm not proud of that. That's just the way it is. So along the way, I was able to find, I became an energy healer through a school in Los Angeles, through a healer Curandera in Los Angeles, and I sought that school out where they learned, and I took classes, and I became that healer guy. At the time, I was referred to as Manos de Luz, hands of light, and I learned everything I could, and I stepped onto the red road, and I started to get quiet, and I started to be mindful, and I started to find teachers, and I found a book. I didn't find it; it was given to me, and it was. It talked about the author talked about a sweat lodge that he had gone to in San Fernando. He lived in Highland Park. And while he lived in Highland Park, he found a sweat lodge in San Fernando, and it was attached to a cultural center bookstore called Tia Chuchas in San Fernando, California, the town of my birth. And that caught my attention, and I looked that up, and Tia Chuchas is still there. I went there and asked about sweat lodge because I had never heard of such a thing or been in one. And they gave me a number of an elder. His name was Picos, and I called Picos, and he said, "Oh, why do you want to come to Sweat Lodge?" And I said, "Well, I'm changing my life and all the things, right?" Because apparently they didn't let just anybody come to the Sweat Lodge. They didn't want just anybody, even though they had gangbangers there. They had guns in their towels in the Sweat Lodge. They didn't want just anybody there. And so I wasn't sure if I should show up. So I went. I took a friend with me, Carlos, who is a defense attorney who I met along the way. And I met him in a coffee house where I would go every morning. And I would have coffee there. And there was the coffee house was full of men with tattoos and suits. And they were in film, and they were in law, and they were in politics. And here were all these men in this room, in this coffee house. And Carlos was sharing with me about going to Africa and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And as he started to speak to me about it, he started to cry, and he stopped himself because he realized he was in a room full of men that he didn't know. So he asked if we could meet the next day someplace else away from that group. And he shared the story with me, and it got real personal, and we got to know each other on that level, on a personal level. Well, he went with me to the first sweat, and they told me, when you come here, you bring water, you bring tobacco, you bring food to share afterwards, and you bring a donation. And I did that. And so did Carlos. And we brought cases of water, not just for ourselves, but for everybody, because, it's easy to do something for yourself, but to share what you have with others, that was my way forward. And I do that today. I had my experience in the Sweat Lodge. The first day, I think I only stayed in there 2 rounds or maybe even 3 rounds. When I stepped out, an elder stepped out, Papa Luz stepped out with me, and he said, you got to get that sugar and that caffeine out of your system. Speaking of which, and I heard him. And the second time I went to lodge, I stayed in and I didn't come out. But while I was there, I was looking across the lodge, and I could see my elder across the way through the steam. They had opened the door to the east, and the light was coming in from the fire, and I could see my elder sitting over there, and he had shapeshifted to turn into a buffalo. And I don't know if anybody else noticed, but I noticed. And I always say, I am he who notices. I am he who is aware. I am he who sees, he who hears, he who feels. And after the lodge, I said to Picos, you turned into a buffalo during the sweat. And he looked at me and said, "Are you crazy?" So I was like, I thought you would know something like that when that happens. And apparently not always. Some people do, I guess. But as I move forward, every month, it was every month or 2 weeks, I would go to lodge. I did what they asked me to do. And I would go, and there were guys there that didn't have what they would ask us to bring, and I didn't ask questions. That was none of my business. I just noticed that. I would go and chop wood. I would go and carry water. I would go and prepare the blankets and the tarps for the inipi, and I did that so I could grow. I don't know what anybody else was doing. It doesn't matter. I showed up because I wanted to show up. I had never shown up for myself in my life, except for sobriety. I had not really shown up for me. And to be honest, in my life, people had never shown up for me either. But my friend Carlos showed up with me because he would come every week with me, and I started to meet the men at the lodge, and my elder Hector Mazawali, and Papa Luz, who's crossed over. Papa Luz is just a wonderful man, a real peaceful man, lived in my neighborhood in Highland Park. And that was a relationship with the guy who wrote the book who got me to the lodge. I live in Highland Park as well. I'm an artist. I'm a musician, along with being a healer. And now I guess some people call me curandero. They call me shaman. They call me healer. They call me all kinds of things. And whatever people need from me, I offer that. It's not just about healing physically. It's about my work is about healing emotionally. And because it's when we don't heal emotionally, those issues in our tissues can turn to mental illness and physical illness as well. Heart disease, diabetes, prostate cancer, colon cancer. All those things can be carried from another place and time of our life where there was a trauma caused to the emotional body that in turn turns into physical trauma and mental trauma. So I was a troubled kid, and they would send me to counselors. They would send me to psychiatrists. They would send me to therapists. And that went on for years, and I was diagnosed as being hyperactive. And all the years later, when I became the healer and I started to find my legs, if you will, my ground, my spirit, I realized that I wasn't hyperactive at that time. I was a little boy. And little boys are meant to go out and play and hunt and climb and swim and do all those things. And colonialism has taken all those things away from us. And even though I wasn't raised there it is. I wasn't raised as a native. I lived in the suburbs of the San Fernando Valley, and we were called Mexicans, and they didn't even want us to be Mexicans. And for those who don't know, Mexicans are natives. We're just a little farther south, or we're a little farther north, depends on where they drew that line in the dirt. I wrote a book along the way called Transformation of a Walking Crow. It's about my journey and my transformation of how I got from point A to point B. And the point A started in my mother's womb, and I wrote about that in the book. It started in my mother's womb when my father was being abusive to my mother when he was drunk, and he was yelling at her and hitting her, abusing her while she was pregnant with me. That landed on her heart, broke her heart, and that broken heart landed on my physiology of my heart, my lungs. Heart, and I always say heart, lungs, air, I love, I'm loved, or heart, lungs, air, I don't have the capacity to love, don't have the capacity to be loved. And I was born into this world with asthma, with I didn't have the ability, the lung capacity to be loved as a child coming into this world. Growing up through the young years, my father used to say to me, because I'm pretty dark. Your mother doesn't love you because you're darker than the rest of the kids. So thank you, Dad, for sullying my waters. And I heard that, and I believed that. I believe that my mother didn't love me because I had an older brother who was 2 years older. I had a sister who was 2 years younger, and he was the prince, and she was the little princess, and I was in the middle. I was the middle child, right? That happens. There's a pecking order in all families, and whether it's talked about or not, it's there. And I understood that. And my clothes were always rattier, and I was always told no. And so I would tag along with my father when he'd go off to the park on Sundays and get drunk, and I'd come home in terror in the car, not knowing if we were going to make it or not. But a few years went by, and there was another little boy born into that family, and my youngest sister Yolanda. And I always talk about something, and when I'm talking to my clients and teaching them how to understand themselves, I tell them this story. I say, my father's name is David. They say, yeah. I said, do you know what David means? No, it means the beloved one. David was God's favorite, right? King David. Yeah. So I said, and then I'll say, my older brother's name is David. Yeah. So do you know what David means? And they would say, well, you just told me that means king. Yeah, the beloved one. And then I would say, my youngest brother's name is Caesar. And they would say, Caesar, doesn't that mean king? I said, emperor, czar, same thing, king. What are you trying to tell me? What I'm trying to tell you is, in the world of old, when the kings needed to make a decision, they would call in the mago or the magi. Those of you with Catholic upbringings or religious upbringings, the magos or the magis to confer with before they made a decision. They were the ones that pointed out the star of the Christ consciousness, Jesus. I'm the mago. I'm the magi. I didn't know that as a child. I didn't know that as a drunk. I didn't know that in my 30s. I didn't know that in my 40s. This was spoken to me by the spirits in my 50s. I'm a 64-year-old man. And I heard that from them for the first time. And I said, okay. I stepped into the role as the mago. I'm the mago. Now, I don't go around telling people, I'm a magi. I'm a mago. I'm a, what other word? I'm a shaman. I'm a this. No, I don't do that. But whatever the community and the people call to me as, I answer to. I say yes. And I think that's how Susan and I met before I went to Gathering of the Elders some time ago, 3 years ago, I think it's been now. I'm not sure. 2 or 3 years. Anyways, so I wrote this book about my journey forward and my journey through Alcoholics Anonymous, my journey through the marriages, my journey through shedding the skin, the thick skin that I had worn for years and years and years. And I began to come into the heart, the place of peace, the place of knowing. I always say much as I say heart, lungs, air, I love, I'm loved. Or heart, lungs, air, I don't have the capacity to love, don't have the capacity to be loved. I say this is my heart. Within my heart are the 4 chambers of the medicine wheel. There are 4 chambers in the heart. And I love knowing that because I went to a school for healing called Lionheart. And that was kind of lost on me for a long time. But once I started walking the red road and understanding the 4 directions, the 4 medicines, the 4 peoples, the 4 animals, all those things, I didn't know my way through the world, even as a 40 plus, 50 plus year old man. And it was in my 50s when I came to the understandings that I came. I was at a Shumash powwow in Santa Ynez, California, quite a few years ago. And I was looking for what's called ayotes. Grandpa, I don't know if you know what ayotes are. Ayotes are a seed pod from the white oleander that the Aztecas, the danzantes, wear on their wrists and on their ankles when they dance. And they wear 52 on one and 52 on the other. Well, I didn't know that. But I was looking for ayotes to make rattles because I was already starting to make drums, starting to make rattles and, move in that direction as an artisan and a medicine person, I started to do those sorts of things. And I went to this powwow, and I saw a booth. They had a round of ayotes. They had 104 in there. And I asked the guy, how much for the ayotes? He says, they're $50. I said, I'll give you 40. He says, no, I can't do that. And I said, okay. So I went next door to the booth, and she had ayotes. And I asked her, how much are those ayotes? $50. I'll give you 40. No, I can't do that. And I said, how many are in that wheel? She said 104. I go back out to the first guy, and I ask him, why is there 104 ayotes in that wheel? I didn't ask him to sell them to me at a cheaper price. I just asked the question, why are there 104? He said 104 is a total of the duality of the years that we live. We live 52 and 52 years. He said the danzantes, Aztecas, when they danced, they were 52 ayotes on each ankle and on each wrist, celebrating the duality of each lifetime of 52 and 52. He said at 52 years old, the Mexica, the Aztecas, those from central Turtle Island of Mexico, I'll call it Mexico, they celebrate the duality, and they celebrate becoming an elder at 52. Well, I was 56 years old when I learned this. And I was like, oh, I'm an elder? So this question started rolling around. I didn't ask anybody. I didn't tell anybody I was an elder either. I just kept walking the road with that understanding. And I thanked them for giving me the information. I didn't buy anything from them. But I had to go to that powwow, because at that powwow, as I was leaving, there was a buck and a deer that walked up to me in the parking lot, and they were thirsty, and they were communicating with me, asking me for water. And I said, well, I don't have any water. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to offer you. And they walked off slowly. And I got in my car. And as I got in my car and started driving through the campground, there was a hawk feather or an owl feather on the fence. And I shouldn't have been able to see that, but for some reason I looked to my left, there it was. So I got out, picked it off the barbed wire, put it in my car, got to the main road, and there was a wildfire if I would drive to the left. So I had to go right and go the long way around home. And I found probably my first or second, third owl that I had picked up on the road. So I did some ceremony, offered tobacco, offered sage, put that owl in the car, and we drove back to the San Fernando Valley. Those were just instances of my pathway forward and my road forward. There are moments that I feel like I don't know enough to tell about anybody anything or share anything with anybody, but I only share the path and my way forward, because I can't share yours and I won't share yours. Yours is none of my business. As I've traveled through my life, I started to travel. I got involved with the Star Knowledge Peace Conference. I met Chief Golden Light Eagle and others in Blythe, California, about 6 years ago. And it had been about 4 years since I had been back. And when I returned 4 years later, they had remembered me and met me with open arms. And I began to go to those events. I went to Susan, to the Gathering of Elders for the first time, and met a whole lot of people. And I began to travel across the country and develop communities in Kansas City, Ohio, where else? I can't think of the name of the places. But I began to develop communities, and this is a part of developing those communities going forward. If you have an opportunity and if you're interested, you can purchase my book, Transformation of a Walking Crow, on my website at sacreddrummedicine.com, sacreddrummedicine.com. It's normally $25. That includes shipping and a signed copy. But for the holidays, you can buy two for $40. They're both signed, but they'll be shipped to the same address, not the separate addresses. So the shipping's included. I want to thank Susan and Jen and everybody, and Tata Geronimo for being here and inviting me just to share a little of my journey, right? This is what we do. We share the stories of how we've traveled through the world. And again, I want to thank Grandma Susan and Jen and Tata Geronimo, and wish you all well, and say aho shinawana honata, aho shinawana hey.
Aho.
Got to get that off. Okay, now, thank you. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I have a couple things I want to say about you before we go to you, Geronimo, okay? I want to just add a couple things about Walking Crow, his drum making. There is no one who makes drums. I've never met a more beautiful drum than the grandmother drum that I have from him. And that grandmother drum, just so everyone knows, in this year that I've been in my cocoon here at home, that drum has gone down to St. Louis, where Pookie Lee is doing it every morning. She's using that drum in her drum circle that she's got online for everyone. And so you're all welcome to get on there and listen to her. She's just phenomenal drum. And when I told her we were going to lock down for a year, she said, "Oh, no, not me, not me." So Pookie came up and got her, and she's been down there. And I thank you for her and the drums that you make. And I've watched you making them, and I've seen him soaking them down in the river. And, you know, they're great. So if you get a chance to get a drum from him or attend one of his workshops or anything, and he'll be here in May, just so you know about that. We'll give you more information as we go. But thank you for that. And then behind me, I have my black bear. And I still marvel that he ended up with me. And it's because of Anthony and the beautiful heart that he has. And now that Bradley Walking Bear Stanton has left the room, I have the bear here to be with me all the time. And I thank you for that as well. So I just wanted to be sure that I got to add that. And I'm so grateful. Thank you. So now we move to Geronimo Archuleta. And now his ears are going to start ringing because I have a couple things to say about him. And I had forgotten that he was here a few years ago at one of our gatherings. We're going to have our 5th Eagle Condor gathering in May. And you were here a few years ago for another gathering with Big Bye and Mac Boogaloo and a bunch of other people that came with us from all over. And I had forgotten about that part of it. And so Mac called me and told me that he had a wonderful man that he wanted to have come and join us here. And I was really excited. And then today I got to talk to Geronimo before all this happened. And I looked it up. We spent over 2.5 hours on the phone together. And I want to be able to say how grateful I am to him, because as I have learned from Grandmother Renee and Grandmother Gail Whitlow, this year is a really sacred time. It's like a cocoon, and it's a time of letting go. And never did I get the learning that I got as I did today from Geronimo about that. And I am forever grateful. He is a walking medicine keeper who I know wherever he goes leaves his DNA footprints, and they are very powerful, very strong, and there's nothing random. When you talk with him and sit with him, you won't walk away the same person that you were when you sat down, and that's a good thing. So I thought about all the things that I would like to share. There's some things on his bio, you know, with his picture that Matt had put together for us. But the best thing that I can do is just like what we did with Walking Crow. I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to pass this time to you, Geronimo, with thank you for everything that you gave to me today for the healing that I needed. Thank you. Aho.
I thank you. It was an opportunity that I was I was very honored to be part of, and to be a part of this. Also, I'm very honored. I began with a prayer for myself. I asked for permission. With the permission of the Creator, with the permission of the Ancestor, permission of the Seven Sisters, I call upon the energies of the mysteries of the universe to come to me, the seventh direction, my heart. That seventh direction is like the drum, is in Mexico, it is referred to as el centro y adentro, the heartbeat that comes from within the drum. The sound that comes out is the soul. And our journey, our soul path, I ask the Creator to allow me to become a hollow bone. I ask Him to use my hands, my voice, and my words in healing, and using His words that are filled with love and forgiveness, and not mine that are condemning and judgmental and hurtful. The Creator speaks through me as I allow Him permission to do that, and I would allow permission to bring this message to you, that if you ever questioned making a soul agreement, I can tell you that it's a reality. I was given a gift at 3 months of age from my mother. She gave me permission to remember. I was the last of 8 children, and I was nursing, and she was singing to me and humming to me, and she said, "Remember this. Then you're the last child I'll ever have, and this is the last time I'll ever nurse a child. So remember this." She kept repeating it. When I finished, I rolled over and I had a vision. I had a vision at 3 months of age that led me back all the way back to where I began my journey into this world, and the agreements I made, the soul agreements I made coming into this world. And we wrote a book, Ernesto Alvarado, Tomas Ilber, and myself, Our Apache Ways. And in the book, I described my agreements coming down this wash, this river, little dry wash. But I didn't talk about what happened prior to meeting this spirit. I remember being in light, like in a pod, like a seed, and it was just warm and light. And a spirit came to me and said, "Are you ready to give your permission to continue your journey to a higher consciousness?" And I said, "Yes." And immediately I felt him wrap his arm around me, and we flew around the world. As we were flying around the world, I remember giggling and laughing, the sensation, because I was a plant. That's what it felt like. I was a plant. And all of a sudden now I'm flying around the world. And we went around 4 or 5 times, and came over the eastern starboard. I said the southwest. So we went to the southwest. I remember choosing my mother. I remember choosing my father. I remember choosing my gender. And then I met this God, the spirit at the beginning, at the top of the wash. And then when we came down the wash, as each turn of the wash, he asked me questions, and I would respond at different things. He asked me how long I wanted to be here. I said I didn't want to be here if I could no longer take care of myself. If I had to be bedridden and be in diapers and couldn't take care of myself, I didn't want to be here anymore. He said, "Well, what kind of illnesses do you want?" I says, "I don't want to be sick." And I was starting to get argumental with him. And I says, I thought of all these different diseases. And how could a 3 month old baby think of encephalitis, think of cancers, of different cancers and stuff? But I remembered them all growing through my life. I remember this vision. It would come back every year or every 2 years, or sometimes multiple times during the years. And I remember all of these agreements that I made coming down this wash. And by this time, he said, "Well, what kind of disability do you want?" And I said, "I didn't want to be disabled. Like I didn't want to be blind. I didn't want to have a any kind of a disabled." And I was upset. He says, "You have to have something. You need to experience it." And I just changed the subject. I said, "Well, then take my toes. Take the toes. I don't care. Let's change the subject." And we continued on. Well, when I turned 21, a month before I got married, I got my hand stuck in an auger, a material mixing machine. and my hand was thrown up inside of the machine, and I thought of a block, a solid block, and it was just enough of a thought that jolted the auger, and I was able to pull my hand out from underneath the machine. My fingers were dangling. All of my thumb, my fingers, except for my little finger, were literally hanging from the ligaments. And so when they asked me if I would want what disability I wanted, I had already agreed to my toes. My hand today, there's no arthritis. It is strong. It is very strong. But I had already agreed. I made a contract that it was my toes that I needed to learn how the disability. And so these different things, as I went through life, I started to learn how they came to me, and I would make sense of all of these different things. And this brought me to the point that I gave my permission to everything that happened in my life. I made a soul contract of all the good and the bad, because I came here to raise my consciousness up to a higher level. At the end of my journey, I can say that I have grown spiritually and mentally and physically. Our bodies just keep changing anyway. The second example of asking for permission was a good friend of mine. His name was Quiz Lopez, and he was a medicine man from Tenochtitlan. He was the head firekeeper. He told me of a vision one time that he had, that it was a whole day of ceremony and him doing healings and doing all these things. And he was tired. He went to bed. And as soon as he fell asleep, two spirits appeared at the foot of his bed, picked him up and walked him through the wall into another pyramid. That the door just appeared, and they went into a chamber, and light just appeared on the walls. Another door opened up. They went into a big chamber, and there was seats, and judges were sitting up on the seats, and there was like a courtroom. There were 7 women standing on the one side of the courtroom, and he was on the other side. Immediately, when he was in there, these were the ascended masters. That's what I gathered. All of them began to chastise him. Who gave you permission to do this? Who said you could do this? Who told you could do these ceremonies? No one allowed you to do that. And each one of them ascended masters were condemning him and chastising him. And then he says that one of the last judges said, well, can you find someone that will give you permission? So he asked to cross the aisle to the 7 women, from the eldest down to the child, and each one of them said, no, they should do more. They should do more for you. You should be physically, they should hang you from the ropes for eternity. I finally got to the last one, the youngest child, and he asked her, will you give me permission? She said, yes, I will give you permission, only because you did it from your heart. And with that, he woke up. And he allowed me to share that. He shared that with me. My third example is a man by the name of Ricardo Pascuales. We went to Mexico City. We went to Puerto Vallarta. And outside of Puerto Vallarta, 70 miles, is a place called Puente Vista. And in Puente Vista is where they used to do the peyote ceremony in the open, naturally, as it's naturally done in the ancient ones. And we got there, and Ricardo was talking with Ernesto, and I got my attention, was taken to the other side of the parking lot, and I noticed movement in the plants, and it was hot and still. There was no wind. So I approached it. I asked permission to approach it. And as I approached it, I made a conscious description of the temperature, no wind, the heat, the humidity, every physical thing I could contribute to an observation. I looked down at the roots and I see that this plant was about 5-6 feet tall. It was a fern, and one of the branches from the plant was making a huge figure 8. You extended your arm completely out and made it as large as the figure 8 that you could make. This branch was doing this. And I stood there and I watched it, and I thanked it. I gave it thanks, and I walked away. And so we went up and we went through the gate, and we gave permission. We asked for permission. We made our offerings, and we went up. We stopped along the way, and I was talking to Ricardo, and I told him what I'd experienced of this plant, seeing it do that. And he had a smile that was from ear to ear. He looked like the Cheshire Cat. He says, I know exactly what you're talking about. He said, I came here one time and I was late. And I ran through the gate, and I didn't ask for permission. I just gathered my things and I came through the gate. And I'm running up the path, and all of a sudden it was like if you go through the freezer aisle at the store, the lights ahead of you start turning on. He said the plants started vibrating around me, ahead of me, and they got more violent, the more I tried to hurry. And he said he could feel them grabbing at my shoes and grabbing at my feet. Finally, tripped him, and he fell to the ground, and he couldn't move. He was on the ground, frozen. And then he said, what could possibly happen? And he was scared. And he said, what's going on? What's going on here? Then he realized that he hadn't asked for permission when he came in. So he went back and he said, I will go back and ask for permission. And then they let him go. The plants let him go. And he went back and he asked for permission. And he came in. So the story that I bring to you is that you make these soul agreements and you give your permission to experience them, because I don't believe in a heaven and a hell. I believe that we came here to experience things and to raise our consciousness level up to a higher consciousness. So when we finish our journey on this path, we go to a higher consciousness. My grandmother, Apache, she told me that the last thought that you carry when you're crossing over is the energy that you carry into your next life. So you have good thoughts. If you're thinking of forgiveness, you're thinking of love, or if you're thinking about hate and revenge and retribution, that's the energy that you carry into your next life. So you want to carry good thoughts in your all times. They're with you constantly. They say that we carry baggage. Everybody's carrying baggage. Well, we lay that baggage down, but it's always close to where we can pick it back up. We can't let it go. We're the only creatures that continue to punish ourselves for something that we did 20 years ago. We don't know how to let go of ourselves, and we can't forgive ourselves, and we can't heal until we're forgiven. And I found through prayer, I found a solution. It's a simple sentence. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but I was wrong. I can now forgive myself. I can now heal. Our healing starts in our heart. I have a story of what they call the sacred geometry, of the beginning of life, of the flower of life, how we are all related. It's an explanation of Mitakuye lesson, that when the sperm and the egg get together and fertilize, it divides, and then it divides again, and it divides again. At 72 divisions, that's a sacred number, because at 72 divisions, we are all related. No matter what species, whether gene that you are, whether you're a plant, we are all related at 72 divisions. The next division, the 73rd division, the DNA kicks in, and then all of a sudden you got fins, you got legs, you got wings, you got scales, you got fur. All of the genetic traits break at the 73rd. And what species you're going to become, if you're going to be a fish, a mammal, an insect, a plant. That is Mitakuye Wawesan to all my relations. We're all related at that point. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. I work better when I'm talking in interaction with people and I get their thoughts. But when I call the spirits, I can speak for no one but myself. I am the only one that I can speak for. And the purpose of a proper prayer is to focus. My son told me this. He's a wise young man too. You can't tell people how to pray, but I can show you an example of how I pray. and possibly opens up a way that you can connect with the Creator. At Sundance one time, they asked the elders to approach the tree, and as we approached the trees, this one elder said, "I don't know how to pray. I've never prayed before." I said, "Simply say thank you." And then you can say, "Thank you for this," or "Thank you for that." But my mother taught me, and this is through a vision, that when I pray, I only ask for one thing. Because you have spirits around you that are listening to you. You have to voice it and put it out into the universe, what you want. Creator takes care of your needs. It's up to you to take care of your wants. And so when you put it out there with your voice, all these spirits around you are listening to you. They want to help you. They want to be there for you. But if you ask for more than one thing, you're confusing them, because they will answer one prayer with another answer. They'll answer this prayer with another answer. So you think your prayer was never heard because they heard too many prayers. Only ask for one thing. You can ask for another prayer, and in 5 minutes, you can do another ceremony the next day. But if you focus all of your energy on your intent, because I have come to the conclusion that our consciousness, what we are consciously, is the energies of intent, awareness, and attention. The amount of energy that you put into those three things, your consciousness, is what you get out of it. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get nothing out of it. But the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And when I did ceremonies, I do everything I possibly can. I look for things to do. I'm a service. I say I'm in service when I'm doing ceremony, and the Creator allowed me a gift of experiencing something that could only be explained that it came from Him. And for many years, I kept them to myself. I thought that they were a private message. But then after about 10 years, I saw that I wanted to share these every year, these great, beautiful things. And so I asked Creator one year to allow my good friend and my son to also be able to experience these wonders, these mysteries. And they became sun dancers. Because once they see you open up the spirit world, and you're not afraid of it, because it's just like death. If you're prepared, you have nothing to be afraid of. So you prepare yourself by living the red road, saying the right things. I like Buddhism, the eight path, golden path rule of living with the right wages, the right people, the right company, doing things in the right way. And these are things that religion has a way of becoming the dream of the planet, and politics are dreams of the planet. Dr. Miguel Ruiz came up with this, that we have the 4 agreements. We make agreements. We agree to the things that we see as a reality. And a phenomenon, to be a phenomenon, has to be a observed phenomenon. So when you see something that is, is a gift from the Creator, and there's no explanation from our physical world, you have to understand that we're on a 3-dimensional world, and the Creator is on the 4th dimension, the 5th dimension, because it is not limited to our physical world. It is not limited to time and space. The Creator exists all time and in all space. That's the higher dimension that we know. The best we can do is to raise our personal vibration. When you do ceremony and you do something as intense as Sundance, your conscious level raises to as close to nirvana as you possibly can do it, as you possibly can, with whatever you do, whatever you exertion, whatever you put into it. But to reach that level of consciousness, it takes a month to come down. And you don't want to come down. You want to stay at that higher level of love. forgiveness, understanding. It's almost like the peyote ceremony of a total love, opening up your body and becoming one with all love. And that is what the Creator is. The Creator is all love, all forgiveness. We have a world where we've taken the spirit, and that's what I like about what I'm hearing from this new Pope, that is that world that has taken the spirit and put it on sale. And it really has come to the point where it's all about whoever dies with the most toys wins. And it's all about the material world. We sold ourselves out for it's easier. Our comfort is to just rather buy a book on tape. I don't want to read the Bible. On my bedstand, I have the Bible, I have the Quran, I have the Karma, the Bhagavad Gita, and I was allowed to remember my agreements, and I'm thankful for it that I was given this opportunity to share that knowledge, to share this knowledge with you. That we are the Aztec calendar is awesome. I have to mention that I've been studying it for the last 3 months, or the last 3 years, and it's a calendar of consciousness that the male and the female, when the Baktun ended in 2012, was a changing of energy from the male to the female energy. And those that cannot accept the change, their world is coming to an end. But you've seen the change of how grandmothers and mothers are becoming more and more the center of energy of our universe. It is their time. And speak for the grandmother and speak for the mothers. I speak as a man, but I know when I speak of that a woman is blessed when she can feel the tear of the man upon her skin, because that is his soul that is weeping. And the mother is also the heart of the family. And I was blessed by my mother to remember all of the gifts that I was given, and I'm thankful for them. And I'd like to end this with my prayer that when you call upon the spirits, you invoke all the spirits, both good and bad. And so when you finish your ceremony, you invoke them to come to you. But then when it's time to send them off, those spirits that wish to do good, to help, to heal, to protect, to remain, those spirits that wish to do harm, to cause conflict, cause pain, leave. You're not welcome here. Go away from us. Go to a place where you'll do no harm, or to a place where you came from. Oh, Dr. I have spoken.
Thank you so much. Mahalo nui loa, aloha ke akua, Geronimo and Walking Crow. It's been wonderful to have our brothers here to share with us. And I know in my case, I'm here on the Mississippi River, and I have no Indigenous brothers beside me to teach me the things that I need and to hear and to feel that support. And I think that would be the case for many who are out there hearing you tonight. And to be able to have you both share with us the way you have, and to give us that support. And you are our protectors. You are the strength of the grandmothers, to be there for us all, and for the children, and for the mothers, and for the fathers. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I am just overwhelmed with gratitude tonight for the things that I have heard. And I want to say, too, that this was the first time that we've had two of our men together on one show. And I wondered how that would be, what that energy would feel like. And it was wonderful to me. It was just perfect. It's just what we needed, especially at this time, because we're surrounded by men maybe who are not living up to their responsibilities, and to be able to hear from you both and to feel that love and to know that it comes from the place of your heart. We're grateful, really grateful. Now, next week we have Anela and B, and there are two Hawaiian sisters who are going to be calling in from the Big Island where they are right now. And Anela was 20 years in the Army. She was in, I believe it was Afghanistan twice. And B was 24 years. She was in E9, which is the highest rank of a non-commissioned officer. And I had the privilege of having B here with me for about 3 weeks while Anela was skipping around in Egypt having a good old time. And then they came back together and it was just heaven. And so I'm looking forward to that because now we have the balance. We have the brothers, the men, the grandfathers today, and then we'll have the women next week. And this is the way we're rolling. So wherever we are tonight, wherever we are on the nights when they go back into the archives and listen to the talks, wherever that happens to be, each of you carried in from spirit the messages that we needed to receive. And so thank you for being the hollow bones in our life at this time. And so with that, I turn this over now to Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Nyawan Chimigwech. There are so many beautiful messages in the comments. I'm not sure if you two can see them, but people are really connecting with what you've been saying tonight. So thank you so much, Grandmother Susan, and to our honored grandfathers, elders, and teachers who shared their voice with us tonight. What was spoken here lives beyond this moment. These teachings ripple forward. They awaken something ancient in us, something that remembers who we are and why we are here. The circle remains open. The fire is still burning. We carry it now with humility, with courage, and with love. So I invite you, tend the fire in your own heart. Listen for the voices of your elders. Walk with the ancestors. Speak truth. Be gentle, and return here when the time calls again. You can revisit these teachings and follow the full 52-week journey on the Grandmother's Voice YouTube channel. And until next time, may your path be lit by the wisdom of the grandmothers and grandfathers. May you never forget, you are a part of this story too. Yawen, miigwech, bamapi, until next time, everyone. Thank you.
Mahalo. Mahalo nui loa. Aloha ke akua. Aho.